guys, so here is my review of the items in the July 2016 art box, and I did not include this with my unboxing video because I felt like it would make it too long, and a lot of times some people just really want to see just what's in the box. They don't really care a whole lot about seeing the review. So I did these two separately, and I used for this demonstration, one of my larger pieces of Yupo, and instead of using the smaller little pad that came in the box. But I wanted to show you guys that I was using the same paper. And I really like the QoR paint. It's spelled QoR, but it's pronounced QoR. And it really maintained its brilliance after drying. It still remained a fairly vibrant color. And I don't typically use tube paint when it comes to watercolor, but I may try out this specific brand just because it does hold its color so well, and it is such a vibrant type of watercolor. And one of the things that they maintain in their description of the product is that it has the flow of watercolor while still maintaining the vibrance and luminosity of acrylic paint or oil paint. And it also maintains that it's good for a glaze, and I did not try it as a glaze, but that may be something I may do later on, and maybe I'll post that and show you guys the results of what it looks like when you use it as a glaze. You do have to hit it pretty hard with the water to get to where you have the watercolor dissolved enough to get that brightness, because you can see when it first comes out of the tube it's really dark, and I had to use a good bit of water to get it to start to dissolve so I could get that bright, vibrant yellow that I used for my flower. And then they also sent me a number 6 round Princeton art brush by Princeton Brush Co. And this is part of their next generation of synthetics. And I got one of the elite brushes, and it's supposed to resemble Kolinsky Sable. Even though it is a synthetic brush, it's supposed to resemble it in color and in its properties. I did find that it is a lot smoother than most of my synthetic brushes. It's a lot softer, and it's much more dense. There are more bristles in this one than my typical synthetic number 6 brush that I normally use. And it's mostly recommended to be used with watercolor. I think it got a 5 out of 5 to be used with watercolor, and then I think a 1 out of 5 on acrylic and oil paint. And then it got a 2 out of 5 on stiffness, and I would agree with that. It's a little stiff, but it's still enough to move around smoothly on the paper. So I really like the Princeton Elite. It's got a nice smooth handle, and it is a little bit wider where I hold with my fingers, which helps with control and comfort when I'm painting. And while I was working on my flower, I also went back and pulled some of the paint off with a paper towel, because one of the things that Yupo advertises about their product is you can go back and remove the watercolor or pull it off in areas once you have already painted over it. And if you watched my first ArtSnacks video, I actually paint a little bit of a section on the paper and go back and completely wipe it off with a paper towel. So I also wanted to show you guys that in my demonstration, that you can go back and pull the paint off once you have painted the Yupo paper with your watercolor. Next, I used my Pentel Arts Hybrid Technica black pen that they sent me. This is a 03. And I found out when I made my calf drawing in my first video that this does not respond well to watercolor. I initially drew my calf with the black pen, and then I went back and painted it in with the QoR Watercolor paint, and I had to be really careful because I noticed when I started to paint that it started to bleed really bad. So I also wanted to show you that in the video. You can see as I'm painting in the flower, it does not look very pretty. Once I hit the ink with the watercolor, it starts to bleed and turn my paint a grayish black. I also went back and tried to see if I could use it on top of the watercolor flower that I had already painted once it had dried, and I was unsuccessful with that. So you can't really use this pen at all with the Yupo paper, or at least not with anything that is liquid. The only success I had with using this with my first flower that I painted was outlining it just straight on the paper and not drawing it on top of the paint, and that's where I was the most successful. Like I said, it really didn't want to draw on top of the watercolor, so I could only use it for outlining around the flower, just drawing on the paper. And one of the things it said on the little card that I got with my items is that the Yupo paper is really good also for markers. So I got a couple of my Faber-Castell brush pens and just kind of experimented with them a little bit, coloring them on the paper and just blending them together slightly. They really go on nice and smooth. I found that they blended together really nicely. So if you are a marker person, you may be interested in trying out the Yupo paper with your brush pens. Like I said, I used my Faber-Castell markers. You may want to use your Copics or whatever you are comfortable with using. I'm not really a big marker person, so I just grabbed what I had available, just kind of playing around and wanting to see how well the marker worked on the Yupo paper, since again that's something that they mentioned, that it does work well with markers. Lastly, I tried the Masters brush cleaner, and it says to use with water, so I got some clean water instead of using my water that I was using to watercolor with. And I started with one of my synthetic brushes from Jack Richardson, and I only use it for watercolor, so it's just watercolor stain. And it cleaned it a little bit. I was really expecting it to remove the color completely, so that was kind of disappointing using the brush cleaner on my synthetic brush that I use for watercolor. And it says to wet the brush, and again I got clean water, and to rub it around in the little compact, and then I also kind of rubbed it with my fingers trying to get it down in the bristles really good. And then I went back and got a clean rag and wiped it off a little bit and tried to get the brush cleaner off as much as I could. And I think I also went back and wet it a little bit to wash the cleaner off. And I have to say I was a little disappointed. I honestly thought that my brush was going to come out clean. I mean, it was cleaner, I guess, than what I had originally started with, but it was still stained. And then I also tried a second brush, and this brush I use for oil painting, so naturally it's permanently stained. And I also tried using it with the brush cleaner, and it didn't really come clean at all. It was still stained red. So I'm not too thrilled with the brush cleaner. I may try and use it again later on and see how well it works. I mean, it does kind of clean my bristles a little bit, which I guess is good for removing buildup, but it does not remove the stains from watercolor paint or oils. I did not try a brush that I used with acrylic, so I may try that and see how it works. But that is my review of the ArtSnacks July 2016 items. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, like or subscribe down at the bottom to see new videos and know when they are coming out. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time.